salvation, His wonderful love, I'll shout with the millions on high. He hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock that shadows a dry, thirsty land. He hideth my life in the depths of His love and covers me there with His hand, and covers me there with His hand. Did we sing verse 4?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I zoned out. I'm sorry. I was thinking about something and I couldn't remember if we sang all 4 verses.
You were transported.
Well, I was still focusing when we sang verse 3, where it says, I sing in my rapture, oh glory to God. That sent my mind off on this whole thing. I was thinking about the rapture of just being raptured and singing to God, and I just absentmindedly, I guess, kept going, and I didn't realize I shouldn't admit that on camera, but you know, it's funny. I shouldn't have, but I made fun of a guy once because we were visiting churches back early in my marriage to Ginger. We were trying to find a church where we used to live, and this one church we visited, it was really a good service, but the song leader, bless his heart, he got up. He picked the song. We sang the song. He sat down. They did announcements. And after announcements, he got up, called the same page number. We did the whole song again, and nobody said anything. And I thought, do they not know we just sang this? So see, that's what I get for laughing at people. Now look at me. I don't even know what verse I'm on. They say if you make fun of stuff, it happens to you. Anyway. No, it was just an error, and nobody corrected him. But
Must have been a good song. They just said, let's just sing it again.
Yeah.
he probably had his numbers written down and just didn't. I don't know. I've done it, but get them out of order. Paid $630. But I really was. I was sitting there thinking about that, and I got lost in the song. I didn't know where we were. Here's another one I get lost in. I love this song. What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful, who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden, cumbered with a load of care? Precious Savior, still our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Do thy friends despise, forsake thee? Take it to the Lord in prayer. In His arms He'll take and shield thee. Thou wilt find your solace there. 6:26, and then we'll get into our lesson this evening. Brother Gary, when you're looking for people for a special, and by the way, for them that don't know, he's got a rotation, and Cindy and I are in it. Dee used to be in it. Jolene's in it. Sometimes the choir sings. Gary and Becky sing. We take turns. But that man back there's got a guitar and a good voice. Brother Enrique can sing. Miss Veronica can sing, and they can sing together. I just want to throw it out there. Why are you making that face at me? You've got a beautiful gift for God. Use it. Amen.
You better,
I can't
you
make
better
you, but I'm
sing.
telling you, we would enjoy that. So.
Okay.
Rope them into the rotation, Brother Gary.
Yeah.
We're having a choir special Sunday, but they can be.
Well, it doesn't have to be Sunday, brother. You get them in the list.
Yeah, two.
Just throw them in there somewhere.
We can have 2 songs. 2 special.
We've done it before.
I'll faint up there.
Wait till
you finish your song.
Yeah.
I have found a friend in Jesus. He's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. The lily of the valley, in Him alone I see. All I need to cleanse and make me fully whole. In sorrow He's my comfort, in trouble He's my stay. He tells me every care on Him to roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He all my griefs has taken and all my sorrows borne. In temptation He's my strong and mighty tower. I have offered Him forsaken and all my idols torn. From my heart and down He keeps me by His power. Though all the world forsake me and Satan tempt me sore, through Jesus I shall safely reach the goal. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He will never, never leave me, nor yet forsake me here, while I live by faith and do His blessed will. A wall of fire about me, I've nothing now to fear. With His manna He my hungry soul shall fill. Then sweeping up to glory, I'll see His blessed face, where rivers of delight shall ever roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. Amen. Isn't He though? Amen. I hadn't even started preaching yet and I ran one out here.
Yeah, she's got a mission.
I imagine she does. I don't know about y'all, I'm hot. So,
Yeah, it is.
y'all want it oscillating or can I, you know?
Honestly.
Because I will. I'm a fan stealing guy. Ask my wife. There, I ought to get everybody maybe. Have I told y'all lately that I love you? I do. I love you guys. 1 Samuel chapter 13.
Got it.
1 Samuel chapter 13. And for them who are keeping track, we left off in verse 14. We're going to pick up here tonight. We're going to go backwards one verse. One verse. Miss Janice, is that all right with you? We'll go back one verse. 1 Samuel 13:13 to read into it. We'll get in there in a minute. But I want you to remember that Saul has decided to start the worship service without the prophet. He waited on him 7 days and he just takes it upon himself to offer the sacrifice. He was not supposed to do that. And so that was a bad thing that he's done here. And so that's what's going on. When we get to 1 Samuel 13:13, this is Samuel talking when he arrived. Samuel says this. Samuel said to Saul, "Thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which He commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever." Very clearly what he's saying is, you have messed up. You know, God didn't want a king to start with, but He was willing to go along with it just so long as the king goes along with what God wants him to do, and it's very important that we obey God. We're going to run into instances in our life where we have to make a judgment call. Sometimes in life we are stuck where we have to make a judgment call on things that may not be clear. And you've got to seek what God wants, because at the end of the day, He's who we answer to. When there's any confusion or concern about the world versus God, God wins every time. What He says do is what we need to do. If they legalize homosexual marriage, and they have, that don't mean we can go along with that. We have to answer to God, not the world. They want to legalize every drug out there, and they may someday do that. They may decide to legalize them all and just put a tax on them. Just because something is legal or okay with the world does not make it okay. And my favorite one to pick on is the easiest one, because it's just rampant. But this whole living together without being married to each other, it's wrong. I don't care who likes that I said that, it's wrong. Everybody in this room knows somebody who's shacking up. We all know somebody that's doing that, and they shouldn't be. But when it comes down to a judgment call, obey the Lord. And so I say that because it would have been simple for Saul to say, look, we're not having a sacrifice there. We're not. We don't have a priest here, and we're not doing it our way. We're going to do it God's way, or not at all. It would have been an easy stance to make. He's the king. He's got the authority. He can stand there and say, flat, not going to do it, not going to go against God. Instead, he says, well, we don't have the priest, but that's all right. I'll do till the priest gets here. That's the wrong attitude. That's the wrong way of doing things. So Samuel tells him, you've done foolishly, and because of that, the kingdom is not going to stay with your family. He would have established a kingdom with you, but now he will not. Verse 14, but now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee. Just a quick contrast. Look, I don't want to get too much into David, because we're going to talk about David later. But since the verse mentioned the man after God's own heart, let me share this much about it. David made mistakes too, but where David was a whole lot better than Saul, he had a heart that wanted to please God. Now, he had moments in his life where he wasn't trying to please God, but overall, he had a desire to serve the Lord and honor the Lord. Saul had a desire to do whatever made people happy. Saul was the people's choice, not necessarily God's choice. Saul was the guy that when they went to make it official, make him king, they found him hiding among the stuff. It showed you his courage. It came and went, but his heart was not to please the Lord. And so without that kind of leadership, your kingdom won't stand. And so he's pretty well told that here. This is going to be a one-king dynasty. You will not have a son rule over the throne, and you won't have a grandson rule over the throne. It ends with you, and that's what that means in verse 14. Now, some of the rest of this is really, really interesting to me. May not interest you too much, but I will tell you, some of the tactics found in the Bible were used by modern-day warfare. There is a story, and you're going to see this in a minute. That's the reason I'm bringing it up. Some of what you're going to see in the latter part of this chapter and the first part of the next chapter are tactics that were used in battle, especially in chapter 14. That there is a famous General Allenby during the First World War. He's a British general, not an American general, who read and studied the Bible and studied the geography of where they were at, and saw how using the land in a certain way to help with your battle tactics, help them to win. General Allenby is famous for writing that he followed the Bible, especially these two chapters, when he attacked the Turks during World War I and was successful. Now, I said that just to point it out, but you'll see what I'm talking about when we finish. Look at verse 15. The Bible says, Samuel arose and got him up from Gilgal. Remember, they were at Gilgal, which is where the 12 stones were set up. That was a place to remember what God's done for them. So Samuel leaves unto Gibeah, which is in Benjamin. Saul numbered the people that were present with him about 600 men. If you're wondering why that's there, let me share something with you. In the first part of the chapter, last week, what we were talking about was one of the reasons that Saul went ahead and offered sacrifices, he was losing men. As the Philistines were growing their army and preparing to attack, people were getting scared. They waited 7 days on Samuel, and in 7 days, that army, which at one point had probably close to 20,000, 30,000 people there, had just, the people were running off and hiding in caves. They were scared. They were afraid the Lord wasn't going to deliver them. And that was one of the reasons, it was one of the excuses Saul gave. This is, and just to give another contrast, not with David, but with Gideon. You remember when God gave Gideon this army and he said, you got too many. We're going to have to reduce that down, because if you win with that many, you're going to believe you did. I need for you to understand it ain't you, it's me. And so when it was Gideon back in the Judges, God took the people he had and started dividing them down till he had 300 men left. Y'all remember that? Well, the same has happened here. God has given Saul an opportunity to see the power that he has and what he can do. What you're going to see here over the course of this lesson is how God delivers in spite of the odds, in spite of how many were against them. You'll see that in a minute. But this is what's left. Up until the time that he offered the sacrifice he should not have offered, he was losing people. So to try to galvanize the people and try to hold on to his army and try to have some sort of leadership, he took it upon himself to offer that sacrifice. Now he's down to 600 men. That's what he's got left. Verse 16. And Saul and Jonathan his son, and the people that were present with him abode in Gibeah of Benjamin, but the Philistines encamped at Michmash. Now, they're not far from each other, but I'm not going to get into geography. Just understand the Philistines are close, and they've got a pretty good sized army. Watch this, verse 17. And the spoilers came out of the camp of the Philistines in 3 companies. One company turned to the way that leadeth to Orpah, unto the land of Shul. Another company turned the way to Beth-horon, and another company turned to the way of the border that looketh to the valley of Zeboim toward the wilderness. Now, none of those names mean anything to you, and I understand that. But do understand this. If you look at a map of Israel, and you go to what I would call Philistine country, which is Palestinian country now, they're the same people. They're the same people. But anyway, you look there now. If you were going to send out 3 little armies, you're only going to go 3 directions, basically. Because what's to the west of Philistine land? The Mediterranean. So you're not going to send anybody that way. But basically they sent 3 raiding parties out to the north, the east, and the south. And the reason they did, these are not necessarily men of battle. This is not necessarily armies. If you look at the way it's worded, these are spoilers. They're raiding parties. Their job is just to go and to take the spoils, because they had Israel so scared and so divided and so scattered. They could just ride through and pick up what they dropped while they were running. They didn't necessarily have to engage the enemy, and if they did engage the enemy was quick to just throw down whatever they had and give it up to save their life, to save their own skin. And if you doubt me on that, look back a chapter when we were studying about that group, and they were willing to pay a tax to save their lives and become servants to the Ammonites. And you remember what they told them? They said, well, if you're going to do that, we got to take your eyeball. And it wasn't until they said, we're going to take one of your eyeballs, that they were willing to fight. So they're short of losing body parts, they're willing to just give up. They don't have any courage. They don't have any strength. They don't have anything of theirs that they feel like they can throw into a battle against the Philistines. The Philistines are too mighty. The Philistines are too strong. They're too dug in. They've got history in the land. Remember, God gave Israel that land, but the Philistines were there before that. Now, they're not supposed to be. If they had been obedient, they would have driven them out there in the time of the Judges. But because of their disobedience, these guys are still hanging around. This is the same group that produced men like Goliath and his brothers. So anyway, having said that, this is what they're facing. And these 3 raiding parties are headed out of Philistine country into the land of Israel to take whatever they want. And they're not used to getting much resistance. So they're not even probably even armed that well. Verse 19. Now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel. King James calls it a smith. I'll go ahead and tell you that's a blacksmith. That's somebody who's good with metal. So it says here, there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords or spears. This is how bad Israel had it. It was their country, God gave it to them, and now they don't even have anybody left that can work with metal. Now I think they probably did, but if you're in a battle against a strong enemy, consider this. When a country's at war, and we know this because our country's been in several of them, one of the tactics of an army that wants to win is to take away your weapons. That's why in typical warfare today, they'll bomb airfields. You remember the attack on Pearl Harbor. They took out the airstrips, the airplanes, the boats, anything with guns. They wanted to try to eliminate weaponry that could be used against them. Well, the same is true then. Not only are they going to take your weapons when they send these spoilers out, they probably commandeered every blacksmith in the country and brought them over to the Philistine camp. And the ones who didn't want to go, they just killed them. But what they've done is they've eradicated your ability to have somebody form you a sword or a spear. But keep in mind, Israel could fight with more than a sword or a spear. Y'all remember what David had in his hand? They were proficient with slings. They were proficient with bows and arrows. So they did have those. They could make arrows out of certain types of stones, and they could make string out of a variety of things, especially out of animals. So they weren't completely weaponless, but just understand, they didn't have the ability to go down and just purchase them a sword or a spear. So anyway, there's no smith found throughout all the land of Israel because the Philistines wouldn't permit them to have one. Verse 20, all the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen every man his share, his coulter, his axe, and his mattock. Basically, this is talking about farming equipment. His share, I think, is a plow, and I don't know right what a coulter is, but all of these are farming materials. Verse 21 says, yet they had a file for the mattocks and for the coulters, for the forks, and for the axes, and to sharpen the goads. So they would either have something to file down just to sharpen what they had, or they'd have to go to the Philistines and pay them, I think it's like a third of a shekel, just to have farming tools. These are not weapons. Philistines would not permit them to have weapons, but they would charge them to sharpen their tools or to build them a tool if they needed one built. And all they had was something to sharpen them with, and they probably didn't even have a good one. So what it does is it tells you the predicament they're in. Now, why is this important? Why am I bringing this up and everybody's full and tired, half asleep? I'll tell you why. Sometimes in the service of the Lord, we find ourselves with seemingly little to work with. Sometimes we feel like we just don't have the resources we need. I don't have $1 million to throw into the ministry. I don't have large sums of cash. I'm not equipped with advertising ads and contracts with television companies. I don't have a big broadcasting platform. In fact, I don't know if we even reach 100 people with what we put out there. I hope so, but I don't know. I'm not Billy Graham. I don't have access to those resources. And the devil loves to tell you that you're on your own and that you have nothing to fight with. And I'm sure in this ensuing battle, Israel is led to believe we don't have enough weapons to have an effective army. We're limited. Bows and arrows and slings is all we've got. And we don't have a lot of men. We're down to almost nothing. You remember what Elijah thought? There was a point where Elijah thought he was all alone. And he went crying to God, whining, saying, I'm the only one left. And remember when God told me, you ain't. Get up. I got work for you left. Get back to work. And I put it in modern English, but that's what God told me. Get up out of this cave and head back up there. I still have things for you to do. Well, the devil wants us to think we have no chance. And these people at this point think they've got no chance. They're limited on weapons. They have a small 600-man army. The Philistines are strong. They got all the weapons in the world, and the deck looks stacked against them. And I can't tell you how many times you find this in the Bible. And I can't tell you how many times the Lord has delivered people in even worse predicaments. All He wants you to do is trust Him. That's really and truly all He's looking for somebody to stand up and say, I don't care if I have a sword or not. I don't care if I have a spear. I don't care if I have a big army. All I care is that I'm on the right side, I'm on God's side, and God is with me. So, that being said, verse 22. So it came to pass, in the day of battle, there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan, but with Saul and with Jonathan his son was there found. Meaning the only sword in the whole camp was the one Saul had and the one Jonathan had. They were the only ones that had one. They probably had a sword and a spear, which is going to be funny later when we're talking about David. But anyway, for the moment, suffice it to say, they are in pretty bad shape as far as armies go. They're not well equipped. Okay. Verse 23, and the garrison of the Philistines went out to the passage of Mishmash. The end of chapter 13 leaves us with a little bit of information. I want you to understand that this means they occupied that area. The garrison that the Philistines had, a garrison is like a fort. The fort that they had set up there, they had pretty good army amassed in that fort, and they were all the time resupplying it. And from that fort, they could attack north, south, and east of there and raid Israel and take whatever they want. Okay? So that's what's going on when we come to chapter 14. I'm trying to get 23 verses into chapter 14, then we're going to stop, and I want to show you something. Okay? So let's go ahead. and dig in. Chapter 14, verse 1. Now it came to pass upon a day that Jonathan, the son of Saul, said unto the young man that bare his armor, Come, let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side, but he told not his father. Now think about this. I don't know how old Jonathan is, but he's salty. Y'all familiar with that term, salty? It means a lot of young men are real salty in their youth. It means that they got some fight in them, okay? He's courageous. Already I see more character in Jonathan than I find in Saul. The entirety of his reign, the whole 40 years that he reigned over Israel, I don't see anything like this in Saul. But I see it in Jonathan. I'll have you know there's nothing negative written about Jonathan in the entire book of the Bible. In the entire Bible. You don't find anything negative. Now that doesn't mean he never did anything wrong. It just means the Bible doesn't record any sin he ever committed, anything he ever did bad. So Jonathan was not a bad fellow. In fact, you're going to find out later he was real good friends with David. But getting back to the point, he tells his armor bearer, he says, hey, let's go over to the Philistines' garrison. Now, if I were alive in that day, I would have to ask the question, why? Just you and your armor bearer are going to go over to the other side. See, Israel's camped over here. That garrison's over there, and they're going to go over there into enemy territory. I cannot imagine what they must be thinking. But I love what's about to happen. So watch this. He didn't tell his father what he was up to. How many of us in our youth told our dad everything we were going to go do? That's going to come back up later, probably next week, so keep that in mind. Verse 2. Saul tarried in the uttermost part of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree, which is in Migron, and the people that were with him were about 600 men. I'm not going to get in again to the geography because it'll bore some of you to tears, but let me just tell you. Saul is a pretty good distance away from where the battle's going to take place. He's under a tree over there trying to gather up the strength and the courage to do what he's got to do with 600 men. Now, he's not real far away, but it made a point to say in the uttermost part of Gibeah, meaning the next town and probably on the other side of it. Okay, he's at least a good town and a half away from where this is going on. And Jonathan and his armor bearer have snuck off and didn't tell anybody. Verse 3. And Ahiah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh. When you read that and you think, who in the world are we talking about now? Let me just clarify. This is the Lord's priest in Shiloh. Shiloh is where they would put, where the tabernacle was located back then. It was the holiest place in Israel before the temple was built. So the priest coming out of Shiloh is all you need to know there, okay? Wearing an ephod means priestly garbs. That means he's wearing what you would wear when you were worshiping or sacrificing or doing something in that ministry. And the people knew not that Jonathan was gone. So what's going on is Saul is gathering up the priest and as many people as he can get together, trying to hold a worship service and trying to muster up some courage and make sure God's with him to go do something. He's actually reeling from his mistake. Let me make this clear and I'll move on. If Saul had not messed up with the sacrifice that he made and Samuel had to get on to him about it, if that hadn't happened, if Samuel had come in and said, well done, good job, well they'd been fired up, ready to go into battle. But see, that's not what happened. Samuel got there and told Saul, you messed up, boy. What are you thinking? Why did you do this? And so instead of getting geared up to go fight, he's basically retreated to the next town and they're standing under this tree and apparently it's a tree of some note. I mean, it was mentioned because it was an important place, a gathering place for that town. And they're all gathered there trying to find the courage to follow the will of God and fight these Philistines. And let me say this too. It is still God's will for Israel to defeat the Philistines. Just because he's upset with Saul doesn't mean that he's against all of Israel and wants him to lose. So I want to make that clear that just because you're maybe out of the will of God doesn't mean that God can't still use you to do what he wants done. It just means you need to get straightened out. You need to get with the Lord. So anyway, he's there and the Lord knows what he has on his mind to do. But anyway, verse 4. This is interesting. They're going to explain this and I can't illustrate it for you. I thought about pulling up pictures, but to be honest with you, I can't even picture this. But I'm going to try my best to explain it and then we're going to explain why I'm talking about it. Verse 4. Between the passages by which Jonathan sought to go over unto the Philistines' garrison, there was a sharp rock on one side, a sharp rock on the other side, and the name of the one was Bozez, and the name of the other, Senah. Now, I don't know why they named them. Maybe somebody died there. Maybe it was important for that reason. But for whatever reason, they've named these two rocks, and this is a narrow place. The closest thing I can give you in thinking about it, who's familiar with the Battle of Thermopylae? Many of you have ever heard of the Battle of Thermopylae? If you're not familiar with it, they made a movie about it. It's called 300. It's where 300 Spartans fought against the Persian army, and they used the terrain because they knew when you coming through that pass, it didn't matter if you had 1,000,000 men. You couldn't all come through there at one time. And it was a lot of trouble to get around behind. So they would just keep sending people through that narrow pass, and the Spartans just kept killing them, kept killing them, kept killing them, and so they finally got wise and found a goat trail behind them. Anyway, this is similar, okay? It's not the same, but it's similar. What Jonathan's done here is he's using the terrain in order to find an advantage against the Philistines. So when it says between the passages that there's these sharp rocks, that's what he's talking about. There's a narrow pass, and the terrain makes it to where there's only so many ways to go in and out of there, and he uses that to his advantage. In verse 5 it says, the forefront of the one was situated northward against Mishmash, and the other southward over against Gibeah. Which doesn't mean anything to you, but it just explains kind of how they were positioned there. Verse 6. And Jonathan said to the young man that bare his armor, come, let us go over unto the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. I like this Jonathan guy already. I like his attitude. He says, you know what, let's just go over and take a look. Hey, if God is with us, we can whoop all the Philistines, just me and you. And if he's not with us, well, then I guess we're going to get ourselves killed. But you know what? It beats standing around doing nothing. It beats wringing our hands and worrying to death. And there's a lesson in that, Christian. But sometimes the devil wants you worried to death. And I got to tell you, this is preaching right to me. Because ever since I sold my business, I have worried more than I've worried in a long time. And I don't know what I'm worried about. God's always taking care of me. Y'all forgive me. I need to pray and ask forgiveness for that, because I've let the circumstances of my life really hamper my prayer life and really hamper me. So reading this passage, if nobody gets anything out of it, that's okay. God bless you. Thank you for coming. I get a lot out of this, because as I read this, I see that God can deliver no matter what you've got, no matter where you're at, no matter what's on the horizon. So anyway, just having said that, I love Jonathan. I love his attitude. He says to his armor bearer, and I'll read it again, verse 6, come, let's go over to the garrison, the fort, the place where they're gathered up to hurt us. Let's go over there. And he points out that they're uncircumcised. Now, I don't want to get into that too much. I just want you to understand he had contempt for people who did not love God. He had contempt for people who were, by saying uncircumcised, you're basically saying heathens, godless heathens. That's what that means. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for there's no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few, and truer words are never spoken. There's absolutely no restraint. God is not limited by my problems, and God's not limited by your problems. You know who's limited by our problems? Us, if we don't trust God. But God's not limited by those things. And I've seen him do a whole lot with very little. And so has Jonathan, evidently, because he understands. I wish I could understand how such a good young man came from such a bad father. But anyway, maybe he had a real good granddaddy. Verse 7. And his armor bearer said unto him, I like this guy too, do all that's in thine heart. Turn thee, behold, I am with thee according to thy heart. Meaning, if you go, I go. You don't want to go, I don't want to go. If you want to go, I want to go. I don't know where you find people like this, but God bless them. Jonathan says, hey, let's go. The armor bearer says, hey, I'm right behind you. Let's get after it. This is a pretty neat thing that happens. Verse 8. Then said Jonathan, behold, we will pass over unto these men, and we will discover ourselves unto them. In other words, they're going to make themselves visible to them. Now, let me explain that. Up until now, when the Philistines have encountered the Israelites, in most cases, they hide. It's kind of like, if you've studied the Vietnam War, and I've studied it a lot. I was not there. I know that shocks some of you, but I wasn't there. I'm kidding. I've never even been there. But I've read a lot about it. And apparently, they have a lot of tunnels over there that the Vietnamese would hide in. The Viet Cong had a whole lot of agents in the south, and so they were able to move in and out and hide and keep themselves from the enemy. And apparently, Israel knew how to do this too. You're going to see in a minute the response that the Philistines had to the Israelites kind of bears this out. But anytime that they came in contact with each other, these Israelites would hide themselves. They were scared. They wouldn't come out and meet them face to face. If they fought them at all, they fought them typically from hideouts over there. So anyway, he says, we're going to discover ourselves unto them. We're going to make ourselves visible to them. That'll be unusual to them. They're not used to seeing anybody pop their head out and stare them down. They're used to our people hiding from them. So this will catch them off guard. Verse 9. If they say thus unto us, tarry until we come to you, then we will stand still in our place and will not go up unto them. Now, I want to share with you all of what he's saying, but I'm going to nitpick here for a minute. I want to share with you this statement he just made. Because most people gloss right over this or read it in another version and you miss the meaning. What they're saying here, and this is pretty cool. We're going to show ourselves to them, and if they say to us, y'all wait right there till we get there. Now what would you do? Let's put this in modern day terms. You figure if you're the enemy and you're outnumbered and they got more weapons than you're somebody's enemy, and you are caught out in the open and they see you, and they say, you wait right there, we're going to come kill you right where you stand. What are you going to do? Most people say, it's okay, we're going to go hide back where we were. I'd just as soon not die today. But do you see what Jonathan said? He said, if they say to us, stay there, we're coming, we're going to stand still in our place. We're not going to go up to them, but we're not leaving either. We're going to stand right here. Now that's amazing to me. But it gets better. Look what he says next, verse 10. But if they say to us, come up unto them. Y'all come here. Save us a trip, y'all come to us. Then will we go up, for the Lord hath delivered them into our hand, and this shall be a sign unto us. This is funny to me. There's an old saying when I drove a truck. You see a lot of stuff on the road. I kept my CB on, I kept my channel 19 on all the time, and I was all the time witnessing stuff that just blew my mind. I'll give you an example. There's always somebody getting mad at somebody else in a road rage incident, where they'll get on the radio and start yelling, cussing at one another, and one of them eventually, sooner or later, it always ends the same. Sooner or later, somebody will say, well, just pull over, and I'll pull over, and I'll whoop you right here on the side of the road. And always was said. It happened every time. And almost always, one of them would say, yeah, I'll pull over and fight you, and then he wouldn't. He'd let that guy pull over and drive on off. And we had the same saying every time I witnessed that. We'd say, one of them's scared and the other's glad of it. It was just something we used to say. When we see a couple people arguing, they're going to fight, and then nothing happens, say, well, one of them's scared and the other's glad of it, because he didn't want to fight either. Well, I read this, and I'm thinking about these Philistines, and it occurred to me that one of them's scared, the other one ain't glad of it. He wants to fight. Look, he's not bluffing here. This is what's crazy to me. Because the Philistines can say one of two things. They can either say, hey, you stay right there, we're coming. Or they can call them out. This is a bluff. This is how I know this is what he's talking about. If they say, come to us, it's because they don't want to engage. They figure if they say, come here, they'll run off. It was a bluff tactic. They don't mean it. Think about it. An army that's got the resources that the Philistine army has in that garrison, they don't say to you, come here. No. They would come after you. They know your position. They're going to attack. So it's interesting to me, these are the choices Jonathan gives his armor bearer. He says, if they say to us, come to us, we'll go up. The Lord's going to deliver us. This is the choices. If they say, stay there, we're coming, we're not leaving. We're going to stand right here. But if they say, come here, then we're going to go take them because God's given them into our hands. I don't know how in the world he came to that conclusion, but I can tell you that's not the conclusion I would have gotten. It is amazing the faith this young man had. I just can't get over it. Verse 11. And both of them, that's Jonathan and his armor bearer, discovered themselves unto the garrison of the Philistines. Now, here's a little side note. I don't know how many Philistines are in this garrison. And while you're thinking about that, remember, they sent out 3 raiding parties. I don't know how many are left in there. I have no idea, but something tells me their forces were diminished. And I don't even know if Jonathan knew that. Maybe, maybe not. But anyway, they discovered themselves to the garrison of the Philistines, and the Philistines said, behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes where they hid themselves. Remember I told you, I think of the Viet Cong when I read that. They had been hiding in the caves and in the valleys and behind rocks and anywhere they could hide because they were scared of the Philistines. It was not characteristic of the Israelites to stand in this form against the enemy. So when they step out and they show themselves to the Philistines, they're basically doing something completely out of character. The Philistines see this and they think it's a ploy probably. They don't have any idea what's going on. But verse 12, the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, "Come up to us. We will show you a thing." That's just a smart aleck way of saying, "Come here, we're going to teach you a lesson." And Jonathan said unto his armor bearer, "Come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into the hand of Israel." Now I want you to understand, the reason he said it that way, "Come up after me," is because it's a narrow little pass. There's not room for them to go up together. It's so narrow they're going up one at a time. And all I can picture is you've got this garrison set up on a hillside, and they're probably used to fighting people on all the other sides, but not this side. It's not the way you would go. So for whatever reason, this is unusual and uncharacteristic. But Jonathan says, "All right, let's go. I'm going up, you follow me." Verse 13, Jonathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet. Now, without seeing the terrain, I cannot imagine what that looked like. I can't. But like I said, General Allenby used some of these very same tactics when he attacked the Turks. So I find it interesting that the way it worked out has inspired other people to try it. So I just want to point that out, but I'll come back to that. Jonathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet, and his armor bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer slew after him. What that means is, Jonathan's knocking them down, the armor bearer is finishing them off. As they're battling, as he's climbing and they're encountering these Philistines, I'm assuming that the terrain was so bad that they couldn't attack them all at once. Maybe it was a really slippery slope and they're trying to fight downhill, off balance, this one guy on his way up that's determined to be successful. And as they're fighting him, he's knocking them down. I don't know if he's just grabbing their feet and knocking them down and going over to the next guy, or if he's hitting them with something. He did have a sword. The Bible says he had one and his father had one. But it doesn't tell us. It just says everybody he knocked down, his armor bearer finished off. And that's what that means. It says his armor bearer slew after him. So maybe, and I wasn't there, I'm just trying to visualize it. Maybe Jonathan's just knocking them downhill, and as they're rolling by, the armor bearer's just chopping them up. I mean, who knows? Think about it. People are easy to fight when they're falling. They can't stand up and fight back. So however it happened, that's what happens. Verse 14. And that first slaughter, which means they're not through, with Jonathan and his armor bearer made was about 20 men. Now that don't sound like a lot, but that might be all they had left in the garrison. They sent out 3 raiding parties. Within, as it were, a half acre of land which a yoke of oxen might plow. And that just tells you it's not a big piece of ground. There's maybe a half acre there where he's gone through there and killed 20 men, him and his armor bearer alone. But it gets better. Watch this, verse 15. And there was trembling in the host, in the field, and among all the people. The garrison and the spoilers, they also trembled, and the earth quaked. So it was a very great trembling. You know what that tells me? When Jonathan showed up to fight, God showed up to help. If this was an incline, like I'm picturing in my mind, if it was an incline, and they're already having trouble getting down to fight the battle, God starts shaking the earth, guess what? He just helped them win. They can't even stand up. And according to this, it didn't just affect those men in that battle. It says the host meaning the entire army, in the field, among all the people, the garrison and the spoilers. I think that's all 3 raiding parties felt the earth tremble. Whether they were there for this battle or north of it somewhere, they felt the earth move and it quaked, and it was a very great trembling. Translation, that was a big earthquake. It gets better. Verse 16, and the watchmen of Saul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude melted away, and they went on beating down one another. Now, picture this, if you will. This is what I imagine, and I was not there. This is what the way my brain works. So, while Jonathan's fighting these few little 20 men at the back of the fort somewhere, the host, one of the raiding parties, had gone the direction of Saul. Remember, they went 3 directions. Saul's in one of those 3 directions with his 600 men. And so as they're approaching, one of his watchmen looks out there and says, not only is the earth shaking, these guys are whooping each other. It's like watching where's the popcorn? There's a battle going on over here. And we're not in it. They're just whooping each other. They just started whooping each other. This is amazing. It says, verse 16, I'll read it again. The watchmen of Saul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude melted away. And they went on beating down one another. Now so far, there hadn't been anybody but Jonathan and his armor bearer so much as raise a weapon. And the Philistines are killing each other. Can you imagine that? I'll be honest with you. I can't. But if I'm reading that right, they beat each other down. Verse 17. Then Saul said unto the people that were with him, number now and see who's gone from us. It occurs to him. Somebody started this fracas. I don't know how it occurred to him, but it occurred to him, we're missing some folks. They got 600 people. Well, we got 598. That's what I gathered from that. When they had numbered, behold, Jonathan and his armor bearer were not there. So they had 600 men, but they're too shy. And they figure that out. And apparently, Saul figures out, hey, my son has engaged the enemy in battle, and God's whooping them for him. God's taking care of it. So this emboldens Saul, which just irks me, but we'll talk about why another time. Verse 18. And Saul said to Ahiah, that's the priest, remember the priest is there, bring the ark of God, for the ark of God was at that time with the children of Israel. Now, they've done this before. Did it work out for them? Last time they took the ark into battle without asking God, what happened? Anybody remember? Hemorrhoids. Y'all remember that? We talked about it. Well, it didn't work out for them last time. The thing was taken, the Philistines took it, and it didn't work out for them. But anyway, this is the way Saul thinks. Now listen, God is already fighting this battle for them. God is already engaged in battle. The people are whooping each other. Saul's answer is, bring the ark. We're going to make a big show of this. And I disagree with his tactics, but I'll talk about why another day. Verse 19. It came to pass while Saul talked unto the priest, that the noise that was in the host of the Philistines went on and increased. And Saul said to the priest, withdraw thine hand. Let me put that in modern day English. He said, stop what you're doing. We're missing the battle. The Lord's doing it all without us. Jonathan's going to reap the benefit of this. We don't have time to get organized and try to get the ark and do all these things. He says, forget it. Just withdraw thine hand. Whatever you're doing, stop it. We've got to get after it. Verse 20. And Saul and the people that were with him assembled themselves, and they came to the battle. Listen, they're late getting there. But they go. And behold, every man's sword was against his fellow. And there was a great discomfiture. Let me explain to you what that means. God had put the fear of himself in them. They were discomfited, and it didn't have anything to do with Saul or 600 men. It had to do with God. What I'm trying to get at, what I hope you're getting from this is, the battles that we face were God's to start with, and they're going to be God's from now on. The things that we think we have to do all by ourselves, we don't have to do it all. We don't have to accomplish everything that we think we have to accomplish. The Lord will do it. It pleases Him to do it. All He's ever wanted us to do is to trust Him, and to follow Him, and to honor Him, and to glorify Him. And then when something does go right, give Him the honor and the glory and the praise. Far too often, we think it's up to us to do something, and we want to pat on the back when we do it. I'll be honest with you, I'm getting to the point I don't want any more pats on the back. I want to give God all the honor and the glory for all the wonderful things He does. Look, He does so many things every day if we just sit back and watch. We just pay attention. I cannot tell you how He gets me through every single day. I can't describe to you the way He helps me from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. I can't even, we sing a song sometimes. I can't even walk without Him holding my hand. And it's true. Verse 21. Moreover, the Hebrews that were with, this is nuts. Watch this. The Hebrews that were with the Philistines before that time. Y'all know what that means? The Benedict Arnold types. There were Israelites who had joined the Philistines. They said, look, if you can't beat them, join them. We'll just join right up. They had a group of Israelites that were already mixed in with them. They said, look, we won't fight them dudes. We're just going to join up with them. Hey, people do it all the time. They say, we can't fight against the devil. We'll just join up with it. Can't fight against the world. We'll just join up with it. And you meet people who claim to be Christian, but they live like the world. This is funny to me. God's fighting this battle and He's winning without anybody's help. And now they got some extra help. They had the 600 men of Saul. And now they got some Hebrews. Look at 21. The Hebrews that were with the Philistines before that time, which went up with them into the camp from the country round about, even they also turned to be with the Israelites that were with Saul and Jonathan. Now, it doesn't tell me how many they were. But the Israelites who saw that the Philistines were losing, they said, hey, we don't want to be on this team anymore. We're going back where we come from. There's going to be Christians, and maybe they really are, backslid Christians who are going to wake up, maybe too late, but they're going to wake up and they're going to get back in line with God. There's a picture of that here. They're going to straighten up. I can tell you, I've been a Christian for a long time. It's only been maybe the past 15 years where I've decided I'm going to join back up with the army of God and do what He wants me to do. I'm 44 years old. I have not spent all 44 of those years serving God. I'm trying to make up now for lost time. These Hebrews are joining back in with the Israelites to fight a battle that they don't need their help with, honestly. But I'm glad that they're seeing the hand of God in it. Verse 22. Likewise, all the men of Israel, which had hidden themselves in Mount Ephraim. If I were to show you a map of how far away that is, let me just tell you. Apparently, this earthquake was huge because the Israelites who were hiding in the caves some distance away heard, apparently somebody's running that direction with the news. And they hear about this battle, they hear God's winning it, and the earthquake scaring them, and Israel's beating the Philistines. And now here comes people who had left the battle a few days earlier. 7 days before, when they were all gathered there and waiting on Samuel at Gilgal, Samuel gets there and they're down to 600 people. Well, now here they come. Isn't it funny how people show up after you don't need them anymore? I find that funny. But it says, hey, when they heard that the Philistines fled, even they also followed hard after them in the battle. They wait till the Philistines are running the other way, and now here they come to help. Verse 23, so the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle passed over unto Beth-aven. Now we're going to stop there, and I told you we would, because what we're going to look at next is a separate subject that happens afterward. And you can study ahead and read it if you want to. But here's what I gathered from this, and I hope this is what everybody got out of it. Life is hard. It is. Especially when you don't know what's around the corner. You get to thinking about it. Sometimes we get so spoiled as Americans, we think everything's going to be wonderful. We're not guaranteed a country tomorrow. We're not. God could take it away like that. I wasn't here during the Great Depression, but I can't imagine what those people went through. They had a country that was doing okay, and the next thing you know, there's nothing to eat. Couldn't find a job. And those people were struggling and hurting, and a lot of people died of poverty and sickness and disease. A lot of bad stuff happened. It's happened in the past. It could happen again. There's nothing promising us tomorrow. Nothing. We're not guaranteed anything. But here's what gives me hope after reading that. When it looks like the deck's stacked against you, when it looks like there's an enemy on every side, when you feel like you've got to go hide in a hole and hope for the best, you just step out in faith with a little bit of courage given from God, He's going to make a way where there ain't no way. He delights in it. He enjoys it. I believe He gets honor out of helping us through these things and teaching us some lifelong lessons about how He'll show up if you just trust Him. But what it comes back to is trusting and obeying Him. Where Saul messed up is he wouldn't obey God. We were salty when we were young, all of us, to some degree. I think we all had that in us. I know most of you, and I can tell you, most of you are pretty salty still. But listen, that's a good thing when you use it right, when you use it for God, when you're willing to step out and say, I'm not scared of what happens next. Because God's on His throne, and He's going to help me. If He'll help Jonathan and his armor bearer, if He'll help wicked Israel that wouldn't do right, friends, He'll help you and me too. And whatever it is we're facing, just get on your face before God give it to him, and then get up and get ready to fight. I promise you, he'll deliver you through it, whatever it is, whatever you're struggling through, to help you through it. I know that just as sure as I know my name. Anybody else get anything else? Anything different out of that passage? Any comment or questions? All right, thank y'all for coming. Enjoyed fellowshipping with you. God bless y'all this week. Y'all have a good week. Brother Mark Haynes, would you close us with a word of prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this lesson. Thank you for the strength that you're capable of giving us. And the strength is the artist in difficult kinds of circumstances. Father, we thank you for the faith that God has given us. You hold our hand, giving us the strength and the power